Speak you and Apos are sitting across from her at a small table. The candle between you almost burned down to nothing, and Euandapos were 82 minutes into the best conversation Euandapos had in months. Euandapos relaxed. Euandapos were funny. You think Etandapos is going great, but she decided something about you before the appetizers even arrived. 90 seconds in, maybe less, something in her already made up its mind about whether you were a maybe or a no. And Euandapos were still out here thinking the good stories are what win her over. Wait, read that again. Most of what you think matters in those first moments does Nandapos move the needle at all. The joke you rehearsed in the car, the way you planned to bring up your job. None of it is what Ndapos actually being measured. What Tandapos being measured is something underneath all of that. Something Euandapos were not even aware Euandapos were broadcasting. And it and Apos happening faster than your brain can keep up with hers. Euandapos were not bad at this. Euandapos were not unlovable. And Euandapos were not doing something obviously wrong. You just never got taught what Ndapos actually being read in that window, because nobody tells men this part out loud. Every guy Euandapos ever felt confused walking away from a first date, wondering what he could Andapos said differently, has stood exactly where Euandapos were standing. By the end of this, Euandapos will know exactly what Ndapos is happening in that 90-second window, why almost every man misses it completely, and what to do instead, so that the next time Euandapos were sitting across from someone you actually like, Euandapos were not leaving it up to chance. Latandapos, get into it. Most guys believe attraction builds slowly, like a fire you feed one log at a time, one good conversation leading to another until eventually she likes you. But the real truth is that her nervous system already made a read on you in the first 90 seconds, and everything after that is just her either confirming or second-guessing what she already felt in her body before her mind caught up. Here Ndapos is the uncomfortable part. Andapos not deciding with logic first. Andapos deciding with a much older, much faster part of her brain, the same part that used to decide in half a second whether a stranger walking toward her in the dark was safe or a threat. That system did Ndapos retire just because Euandapos were on a date instead of a dark street and Apos still running a tand, Apos just running quieter now, scanning your posture, your eye contact, your voice, the way you carry your body when you don't Ndapos think anyone Andapos watching. She Ndapos, not overthinking you, her body is thinking for her and Etandapos, faster than either of you realized. This is why a man can say all the right things and still feel like something was off to her, and why another man can barely say anything memorable and somehow leave her thinking about him for days. It was never really about the words. Most men optimize for what the Andapos are going to say. The women who end up actually interested are responding to something they can Andapos, even name, something underneath the words entirely, and once you see this pattern, you Andapos will start noticing it everywhere. In every interaction, every text, every first 5 minutes of every date you Andapos have ever been on. Here Andapos, where it shows up first. Here Andapos, the part almost nobody talks about. The first thing she reads is Nandapos, your face. Etandapos, your energy before you even open your mouth. Most men walk into a first meeting thinking about what to say next. They Andapos, rehearsing lines in their head, replaying the opening they practiced, trying to land the first impression with words. Most guys think the goal is to say something impressive in the first 30 seconds, but here Andapos is what nobody explains. She Andapos, not listening to your words in that window. She and Apos, reading your nervous system. Is this person relaxed in his own skin, or is he performing? Is he steady, or is he trying too hard to be seen as something? That distinction happens faster than conscious thought, and it sets the entire emotional tone for everything that follows. Speak. Picture two versions of the same guy walking up to a table where a woman is already seated. Version 1 walks fast, sits down too quickly, immediately starts talking, fills every silence like Etandapos, dangerous, laughs a half-second too early at his own jokes. Version 2 walks at a normal pace, makes eye contact, takes an actual breath before he sits, lets a beat of silence exist without rushing to fill it, and only speaks once Handapos, settled. Same face, same clothes. Completely different signal being sent before a single word is exchanged. Something in her is quietly registering, and quote, Handapos, comfortable. So I can be comfortable too. And quote, the tandapos, not a coincidence. Nervous systems mirror each other. If yours is calm, hers has permission to relax around you. If yours is scrambling for approval, hers picks up on that scramble and starts scanning for what ndapos. Wrong, not more confident-sounding lines, not a better opening joke, not memorizing what to say first, but a body that is an andapos, asking to be liked before itandapos, even said hello. The tandapos is the actual currency in the first 90 seconds, and almost no one is taught to see it. When you walk in regulated instead of performing, something in her nervous system exhales without her even noticing it happened. The tandapos is the door opening. Miss this, and every clever thing you say afterward is trying to make up ground you lost before you even sat down. Here ndapos is the part that changes how you ndapos will see every first date from now on. Most men think the way to seem confident is to hold strong, unbroken eye contact, almost like a stare, because somewhere they learned that eye contact equals dominance, equals attraction. But hirandapos was what changes everything. Itandapos, not the eye contact itself, shiandapos, reading. Itandapos, what your eyes do in the half second right after she says something vulnerable, or funny, or slightly awkward. Do you stay present with her, or do your eyes flick away like her moment made you uncomfortable? Picture the moment she tells a story that does nandapos land perfectly. Maybe she stumbles over a word or laughs at something that was nandapos, actually that funny. One version of a manandapos. His eyes dart down or sideways for a second, an almost invisible flinch, like handapos, embarrassed for her. The other version keeps his eyes right there with her, maybe with the smallest smile, like her imperfection did nandapos, change anything about how present he is. Her brain is quietly registering, and quote, he didn't an apos flinch when I wasn't an apos polished. And quote, that single unspoken moment does more for how safe she feels around you than an entire evening of well-delivered lines, not staring harder, not intense, unbroken eye contact meant to project dominance, but eyes that stay warm and steady through the parts of her that aren't ndapos, performing either. The tandapos is what actually reads as grounded instead of intense. And when you can hold that kind of presence through her awkward, unpolished moments, something shifts in her chest. A quiet permission to stop performing herself. The tandapos, the moment a date stops being an audition for both of you. This next one is the one almost every man completely misses, because it looks like the opposite of what he and Dapos been told works. Most guys think the goal of a first conversation is momentum, keep it flowing, never let it stall, fill every gap so it never feels awkward. Silence feels like failure, so men race to rescue it. But hirandapos, what nobody explains. A short, comfortable silence is one of the fastest ways her body checks whether you andapos were actually safe to be around, or whether you need her to keep performing to keep things afloat. Think about a pause after she says something a little more real than small talk, maybe about her family, or something she andapos nervous about. One man immediately jumps in to fill the space, cracks a joke, changes the subject, almost like the silence itself was unbearable. The other lets the silence sit there for 2 or 3 seconds, holds her gaze gently, maybe nods once, lets it breathe before responding. Speak something in her registers, without words. And quadi don andapos have to keep this moving for him. He can hold it. And quote, that tiny window teaches her more about what being in a relationship with you would feel like than an hour of witty back and forth ever could. Not a rehearsed dramatic pause for effect. Not awkward silence out of nervousness, but an ease with quiet that says, you andapos, not afraid of stillness with another person. Most people have never actually experienced that, and it stands out immediately. Once she feels that you can sit in silence without needing her to rescue it, the pressure she did nandapos even know she was carrying starts to lift. Tatandapos, when a date stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like an actual conversation between two people. Hirandapos, where it gets a little more physical, and this is the one most men never think to notice at all. Most men focus entirely on facial expression, on smiling enough, on seeming friendly and warm through the face. The face gets all the attention. But here in Apos, what changes everything? Her body is reading your body, not just your face, and specifically Itandapos, reading whether your shoulders and chest stay open toward her, or whether they subtly close off the second something gets slightly uncomfortable. Picture the moment she disagrees with something you said, gently, not aggressively, just a different opinion. One version of a manandapos. Shoulders pull back a fraction, his torso angles slightly away, arms cross without him even noticing. The other stays open, chest still facing her, maybe leans in a little instead of away, treats the disagreement like part of the conversation instead of a threat to be defended against. Something in her is quietly noting, "And quot he did nandapos, close off when I push back a little." And quot atantapos. A signal that runs deeper than anything spoken. It tells her nervous system that you can handle friction without withdrawing, which is one of the rarest and most attractive traits a person can carry into any relationship. Not forced open body language performed like a trick, not overcompensating with exaggerated warmth, but a chest and shoulders that stay honestly open because you andapos, not actually threatened by a small disagreement. That authenticity is unfakeable, and she can feel the difference instantly. When your body stays open through friction instead of retreating from it, she starts to sense that you could handle the harder conversations too, the ones that come months or years down the line. That andapos, not something she consciously calculates. It just registers as safety. This next part is subtle, and itapos is the one that separates men who get a second date from men who get a warm goodbye and nothing else. Most men think the goal of the conversation is to be interesting, to say things that showcase who they are, their achievements, their opinions, their taste. Being interesting feels like the whole game, but hirandapos, what nobody explains, what shiandapos actually reading, is whether you andapos curious about her, specifically whether your questions come from genuine interest, or whether the andapos just a pause before you talk about yourself again. Picture the difference between a man who asks her something and is already halfway to his next sentence before she finishes answering, versus a man who asks a question and then actually sits with her answer. Maybe asks a small follow-up that shows he was really listening, not just waiting for his turn. Her brain is quietly registering, and quote, he actually heard me that time. And quote, the tandapos, it. The tandapos, the whole moment. It sounds small, but it is one of the strongest predictors of whether she walks away thinking about you or forgets you by the time she gets home. Not performed interest with exaggerated nodding and forced enthusiasm. Not a list of rehearsed questions from some dating guide. But real curiosity about the specific, particular person sitting across from you, the one who is not like anyone else she andapos ever talked to. Speakons, she feels genuinely seen instead of just entertained. Something shifts from evaluation into actual connection. Tatandapos, the difference between a date that was fun and a date she can andapos, stop thinking about the next morning. Hirandapos is the part that most men would never guess matters at all, because it seems too small to count. Most guys think the biggest risk on a date is running out of things to say, so they over-prepare, over-plan, try to control every beat of the conversation like a script they can andapos, deviate from. But hirandapos, what changes everything. Shiandapos, reading whether you can handle things not going exactly as planned, a missed reservation, a spilled drink, a joke that does nandapos, land. Without your whole mood shifting, picture a small disruption. The waiter gets the order wrong, or it starts raining right as you andapos, walking somewhere. One manandapos. Face tightens, his voice gets clipped, frustration leaks out even if he tries to hide it. The other laughs it off, makes a small joke about it, treats it as a minor plot twist instead of a crisis. And the mood in the moment does nandapos drop at all. Something in her registers, on quot, he does nandapos, need everything to go perfectly to stay okay. And quote, thatandapos is not a small thing. Thatandapos, her getting a preview of what stress looks like on you, which is one of the most important previews a person can get before deciding whether to invest more time, not forced positivity or pretending nothing bothers you, not toxic optimism that ignores real problems, but a steadiness that comes from actually being okay inside, not from performing okay on the outside. When she sees that a small hiccup does nandapos destabilize you, she starts to trust that bigger hiccups, the real ones life eventually throws at every couple, would nandapos destabilize you either. Thatandapos, the kind of trust that takes most people months to build, and you just built a version of it in front of her in real time. Hirandapos, the last piece, and itandapos, the one that ties every other point together into something she can actually feel as a whole impression. Most men think the ending of a date is about the exit line, the smooth way you say goodbye, the confident close that leaves her wanting more. But Hirandapos, what nobody explains. What she remembers most is Nandapos, the last thing you said. Itandapos, whether the entire time, start to finish, you seemed like the same person, or whether you shifted your energy depending on how the date was going, more confident when it felt good, more anxious when it felt uncertain. Picture a man who is warm and relaxed at the start, then gets visibly tense the moment the conversation lulls, then relaxes again once she laughs at something, his whole state rising and falling with her reactions like a puppet on a string. Now picture a man who stays roughly the same person, whether Hirandapos, laughing hard, or sitting quietly. Whether the date feels electric or just fine, his center of gravity staying with him instead of shifting to her. Her brain is quietly noting, without ever saying it out loud, that consistency reads as safety, and safety is the single most attractive thing a nervous system can detect in another person, more attractive in the long run than any joke or any story or any perfectly chosen restaurant. Not constant intensity pretending to be steadiness, not suppressing real reactions to seem unbothered, but an actual internal steadiness that does not depend on her mood to hold itself together. And when she senses that Yuandapos, be roughly the same person whether the date went great or fell a little flat. Thatandapos, when a night stops feeling like an audition and starts feeling like the beginning of something real. Thatandapos, the shift almost nobody teaches, and Itandapos is the one that decides everything else. Yuandapos. They're back at that table now, the candle almost gone, 82 minutes in, except this time you know what actually happened in the first 90 seconds, before either of you said a word that mattered. Speak. It was never about the perfect opening line or the impressive story. It was your nervous system speaking before your mouth ever got the chance. This isn't a checklist you run through on your next date. It's a different way of showing up as a person, one where you're not performing safety, you actually have it, because you've done the quiet work of becoming steady in your own skin first. When you internalize that, you stop trying to win her over and start simply being someone worth choosing, and she can feel that difference before you've said a single clever thing. She was never deciding based on what you said. She was deciding based on who you were being while you said it. If you want to know exactly how to build that kind of steadiness even when you don't feel confident yet, that's the video I made right after this one, and it walks through exactly where to start. For now, just sit with this one thought before your next date. You don't have to become someone new. You just have to stop performing and let her actually meet you.